Do you want to quickly introduce yourself whilst everyone comes on?
Pleasure meeting you guys. My name is Amr. My mentorship is quite different from most of the info offers. So called identity architecture, where essentially I help people rewire their identities or change their identities on a fundamental level using neuroscientific and psychological protocols that I've sort of developed myself and taken from pretty big names in the world of neuroscience, psychology, and philosophy, and kind of integrated them all together into something called identity architecture, where I really help people, rethink the way that they relate to themselves in general, in order to achieve whatever success they want to achieve. Reason why I do it is because it worked for me. I've done it for myself. I used to have a plethora of issues, and I've essentially resolved all of them through identity architecture. And then I started doing it for some of my friends, and it worked on them, and then I really got serious about it. So I built this whole thing, and that's where I'm at right now. So very excited. All right, guys. So what are we going to be talking about today? I'll kind of give a rundown of who I am in general, what I've kind of went through, and how my life sort of changed through these frameworks that I've developed, and kind of how you guys can apply them for your lives at least. I'll just start with my personal transformation. So I used to be um, bullied for being fat. I used to be overweight. I used to have crippling anxiety, and that was a quite a bad mixture of things to have, which led to bulimia. I had extremely self-destructive behaviors and a vehement self-hatred towards myself. And what I realized in this sort of process, in being bulimic, was that there were two sides of me. There was the dark side, as I called it, in my Substack, which was the relentless perfectionist who was constantly demanding physical attention, and I was able to achieve pretty insane physiques, um, with just this part of myself who was always surveilling me and always punishing me, and it was pretty violent, but it worked, is what I realized. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the way that you should be doing things, but I would achieve temporary victories through extreme discipline. And then there was this other part of me, which was my core identity, which I called the fat, ugly loser, or FUL. And essentially the way that this would look in my life was I would bulk for eight months of the year essentially, and then I would cut for 4 months. And during that cut, I would become extremely hard on myself, and I would get to pretty insane physiques. Like this is what I look like at the end of one of my cuts. But what happened is after I was done my cut, I would always revert back to being I would always revert back to being fat, or just overweight. And the thing is, I wasn't fat by any external sort of measure to the normal person, but to me, I was. And what I realized is that there were these two identities that were fighting between myself. There was this one identity who this was me when I was 16, and I would just look at myself, and again, I just couldn't stand looking at myself, and I had a lot of self-hatred towards myself. And there was this other side of me who was the perfectionist, and I would cycle back and forth between these versions of myself. And so uh, what I realized was that my core identity, the one that I was constantly regressing towards and regressing back to, was fat, ugly loser. And that's why I would and so what would happen is I would literally gain 20 pounds in 3 days, pretty much every single year at the end of my cuts. I would like drop down to like 220 or 215 pounds, and I would just gain 20 pounds. And I was from August till April, so during the other 8 months of the year, uh, I was I was consumed by self-hatred, and I had the fundamental belief that I am unworthy of the body that my dark side was trying to build. And so I realized later down the road, in retrospect, that yeah, there were two different identities that were fighting between me. On the mental side of things, I had crippling anxiety and severe derealization as well, and I was able to achieve like spiritual freedom through Buddhism and Taoism, studying Eastern philosophy. Financially, I used to be very broke. I make six figures per month now. Last month, I did 200K in contracted rev, like 160K cash collector, 140K cash collected. And I used to be set to, I was set on going to med school. Initially, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And now I'm kind of like living sort of the dream life for myself, which is I'm studying in school right now just because for fun, because I genuinely enjoy studying. I'm in neuropsychology and philosophy. I'm doing a dual major, and I'm also doing this mentorship where I get to essentially which is the culmination of all of these things. And so I'll start off by just talking about some patterns that we see often in the world, right? 80% of people who lose weight will regain that weight within 5 years. Okay, 80% of people. Lottery winners, and there's something called the lottery paradox, often what you see is they either come back exactly back to where they were prior to the winning the lottery, or they will actually be worse off before they won the lottery. This happens a lot of the time. And you'll see it with many people who win the lottery. And even people who do win the lottery and they don't lose the money, many of them remain unhappy. And it's literally called the lottery curse as well, where many people who win the lottery don't actually see an increase in net happiness. And the reason why is because, again, there's this identity issue which we're going to get to. And we just often see like very motivated people, and I bet many of you guys as well have went through cycles where you have a fuck ton of motivation, you're super excited, you want to do something for yourselves, and then you just regress. You self-sabotage and you hate yourself for it, and you don't know why you're going through these constant cycles of motivation and regression and motivation and regression, and it can be extremely damaging to the psyche. And so there's this mystery that I had when I would go through these self-sabotage cycles of becoming a higher version of myself temporarily and then regressing back. And what I realized, or prior to realizing, I would look around and I would see people who would just have this fortress-like permanence in their transformations. And they became somebody new and they actually stayed that way. And I was always like, how the fuck do they do that? Like, how are people constantly able, or not constantly, but how are certain people, like the rare people who are able to achieve like any modicum of success, how are they able to keep it, right? Like I was able to look like this, fine. But if you guys saw what I looked like 2 months after this, right? I didn't look like this. I didn't look like this. Like this was when I was 16, this is when I was 20 years old. I'm 22 right now. But I would still regress back. I would still gain a lot of weight, and like I wouldn't look like this at all. And regardless of how other people saw me, and people are like, "Oh no, you still look great." To me, I was still regressing back, and many of us go through this, right? And so what I realized was the difference isn't willpower, it's not circumstances, it's not your actions that you take, and I'll explain the actions bit in a little bit, but it's actually your inner world architecture is what I realized. And your the if you guys are to learn anything from me from this, take this one thing, which is your your outer world. So whatever you have on the phys on in the physical world, so meaning your how much money do you have in your bank account right now? What does your physique look like right now? What do your relationships look like right now? All of these sorts of things, these are a manifestation of your inner world, and they will always come back to whatever your inner world is set at. When I say inner world, guys, it's synonymous with identity. Okay, and I'll explain that. Whatever your inner world is, meaning your identity, your beliefs, your emotions, and then your internal actions, which I'll explain, your outer world will always come back to it. No matter what the fuck you do, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much success you achieve, you will always come back to this. This is why people who win lotteries, what you'll see is they'll have an increase in their outer world, right? Their outer world will change. They'll have a lot of money and they'll just regress back to where they were. It's honestly fucking hilarious. Like people, there was one guy, like many famous instances of people winning lotteries who have just regressed back to exactly where they started. For example, one guy, $133,000 in his bank account, works a 9 to 5, saved up a decent amount of money, won a $33 million lottery, I'm pretty sure, Lotto Max. 5 years later, $133,000 in his bank account goes to the exact same. Somebody in a trailer park, homeless person, does drugs, like just and lives like quite a sad life, wins a lottery. 5 years later, back in the exact same trailer park. Okay, so you constantly see this pattern of people having success and then going back, success and going back. And the reason why is the person who, for example, worked a 9 to 5 and had, let's say, 130K in his bank account, his identity was one of I am a person who makes X amount of money and who has this amount of money in their bank account. That's what his identity was set at. And so no matter how much your outer world fluctuates, whether it's worse or higher, it will always come back to this set point. Your temperature, right? The temperature that you set your internal your identity thermostat to is how I put it. And so the way to kind of look at your inner world is there's four sorts of there's four layers, okay? The first layer and the foundational layer of your inner world. So again, your inner world is everything that's going on inside of you, not anything on the outside, not your relationships, not your physique, not how much money you have, everything that's going on internally. Okay, so the foundational layer and the most important layer is your identity. Okay, so this is your self-concept, and this is formed by your core beliefs about who you fundamentally are. And it's the psychological source code, as I call it, from which everything else will stem. And this will determine what feels natural for you, what feels deserved for you, what feels sustainable for you. And examples of this, for example, examples of this would be I am intelligent versus I am never good enough, or I am disciplined versus I always give up. I am worthy of love versus I'm fundamentally flawed. Notice how they always refer to the I, the self, right? They're self-referential in nature. And so that's these and just questions to ask yourself about who you believe you are. And the thing is, many of us have identity beliefs that go uninvestigated. A lot of us believe certain things about ourselves, and unfortunately, very sad things about ourselves. And we never actually investigate those things. And those are the reasons why you continue to fall back to the exact same patterns that you've always tried to escape. For example, are you hardworking or avoidant? Are you resilient or fragile? Do you complete what you start? Do you procrastinate habitually? Are you dependent on porn, drugs, food, or your phone? Right? So these are, and there might be a surface level answer that you might give in your head to some of those, which is, well, I mean, no, I am hardworking. But then, for example, if I were to press you in a conversation and really try to figure out what do you actually believe about yourself, much of much of us believe things that we would be shocked to know about ourselves specifically, like we maybe we are avoidant or maybe we don't work as hard as we should, right? And so these are sort of the fundamental beliefs that are kind of running your life in the subconscious. Layer two is the beliefs or is your beliefs. So these are the rules and assumptions about yourself and the world that flow from your identity. So for example, these are your identity is your beliefs about yourself. Your belief layer would be beliefs about the world. So for example, money requires constant struggle is a belief that somebody can have around the world. That flows from I'm not worthy of abundance, right? Or another one is like, I must keep my guard up until or I'll get hurt. That might be a belief that you've learned. Let's say after being in a relationship with a girl and she fucked you over, right? That might be a belief that you've learned. Or good things never ha don't happen to people like me, which flows from I'm unlucky. That might be a fundamental identity belief that you have. And then you might have a belief about the world, which is good things don't happen to people like me, or good things are just hard to come by in general. Okay. Layer three is your emotions. And so as we go up, guys, they become technically less important, but these are all extremely important, obviously, right? And actions are obviously very important, but and I'll get to actions in a second. So emotions are, I guess, the signals, right? These are the felt experiences that arise from your identity and your beliefs. This is what creates momentum. This is what like highlights importance, and this is what provides you with feedback. And so the reasons why emotions can be so important is they can really drive a lot of your internal architecture. And this is why I'll tell you guys to do certain things. But one of the things that I tell many people to do is visualization. It's huge. It's massive. And why is visualization so important? Well, on a on a there's I'm trying to think which way to go about this first. On an emotional level, the reason why emotions are so important is when you are visualizing, for example, or what's pretty cool is prior to my first six-figure month, I was constantly visualizing the feeling and the emotions that would come with giving my mom and my dad and my brother and my sister money to be able to take care of them. That was literally constantly what I was visualizing. And this was the month before I actually did my first six-figure month. And the reason why this works, I guess, on a neuroscientific level is because the exact sort of pathways that are associated with the work that you want to do, a lot of the time can be strengthened if you can give them emotional reasons on the neurological level of the brain. So if you can be telling yourself, if you can really be envisioning the feeling that you'll get by giving somebody that you care about money or doing something that you want to really do that's really important to you, right? All of us have these dreams that we want to do and things that we want to do with money, for example. And the thing is, money in itself is inherently, it's not valuable. It's what you do with it, right? So knowing what you're going to do and what that will feel like, right? And I highly recommend really trying to find your core reasons as to why you want to make money in the first place, or why you want to get the physique in the first place, or why you want to have a good relationship. What will it feel like on an emotional level? That can really drive your inner world architecture. When I say inner world architecture, guys, this tracks right back to neuroscience. All of these things. I'm not saying like some woo-woo bullshit where like I've just made this up. This is my background again is in neuropsychology. So all of these are all of this is fundamentally rooted in neuroscience and psychology. And so what's important to know about emotions as well is that the same external event can trigger different emotions in different people based on your identity, right? So like criticism for some people can feel like confirmation, right? Or it can be a positive thing, uh, or I guess in this example specifically, criticism can feel confirmation of something negative, right? Let's say I believe that I'm fat and that I hate myself, and somebody comes along and calls me fat, and they criticize me. That, for example, if I have an identity that is rooted in self-hatred, that will be confirmation of my self-hatred essentially, and of me thinking that I'm fat. Versus if I actually don't believe I'm fat, and let's say like I actually am confident in myself, which stems from my identity, the way that I'll actually interpret criticism could be constructive feedback, and I'll hear it differently as well, right? And so I'll get into how like your identity also filters the world. Or vulnerability, for example, for some people will trigger anxiety, and for some people will trigger connection by being vulnerable. Again, these all stem from your identities. And so the layer four and the symptoms, right, are the actions. And so these are the visible behaviors that manifest from the previous three layers that I talked about. And what's so important is that these are so commonly targeted in transformation attempts, and people really, really try to focus on the actions. What actions can I take? Just do it, Nike says. All of these things that you hear. But the reason why it's a fundamentally flawed idea of transformation is because, and the way that I look at it is it's like trying to heat up a room by holding matches near the thermometer. Let's say I just keep fucking lighting matches and I go to the thermometer and I just hold the matches near the thermometer. The temperature of the room will increase, right? The reading will increase. However, the room itself, the reading of the temperature of the room will increase, but the room itself remains the same temperature, right? Considering the room is a normal sized room. And whereas if I actually go to a thermostat of the room, I can actually like turn the thermostat and slowly increase the temperature of the room. Okay. And actions, like the reasons why actions don't matter, essentially. And obviously, I don't mean that to say that you shouldn't do anything, right? Like actions are eventually are the actual thing that will get you to where you want to go. But if they are not rooted in identity, you will always, always, always be at risk of self-sabotage. And to be honest, you always will just regress back to where your identity was set at, no matter what actions you take, right? This is again why people or why I, for example, or let's say you go on a diet, why those 80% of people who gain weight after they diet, right? They'll take the correct actions, they'll lose the weight, but then after the diet is done, their identity is still I'm a fat person. And so two people, for example, will try to lose weight. One person tries to lose weight and they think, I want to lose weight because I'm healthy. Other person wants to lose weight, but they want to lose weight because they say, I want to lose weight because I am fat. Okay. They end up both losing the same amount of weight. After they both lose the same amount of weight, one person regresses. Who do you think regresses? Right? It's the person who's fat, or who thinks they're fat, right? They'll just go back to that identity that they have about themselves. And that is why it's so important to, when you're actually doing something, that you need to believe yourself to be the person first. Okay. So the way that I kind of see this is, and I wrote about this in my Substack. I highly recommend you guys read that, by the way. Like it's kind of like this, but it's just extremely in depth. And what I talk about is this thing called the terrarium or the zoo room. You know, like these big rooms with animals in them in the zoo. And the central thermostat is your inner world architecture of that massive room. So imagine you have this massive fucking room which can host any animals and any plants and all of these things. And the thermostat is the inner world, and the climate control essentially determines, or the climate in general determines which life forms can survive, right? If the zoo room or the terrarium is set at -40 degrees, only penguins, for example, will be able to survive, and other cold adapted species. Okay. And your the life forms are the outer world circumstances. So, for example, like penguins would represent one thing. Certain, let's say, like cold adapted fish would represent one thing, and they can represent like relationships, your finances, your health, your opportunities. That's what the animals represent. Okay. And so what happens? What happens when you turn up the temperature of a zoo room, right? Or of the terrarium? You will see that the animals that were there previously, like the penguins, will fuck off because they don't want to stay in in a room where the temperature is increasing. They want to leave. But what you'll also see is you'll see new animals begin to emerge, right? And these new animals are the outer world manifestations, and these are essentially are like the better physique and the better relationships with friends and the financial success and all of these things, right? And so I kind of talk about like what the animals represent. It's not super important, but what is important here is that the and the critical truth is that the animals only will migrate to stable habitats and stay only if it remains stable, right? And so this is why if you continue to focus on actions and if you think that you can somehow get these apex predators, right? Like the major successes, like the lions, let's say, that will only come when the temperature is at 20 degrees or 30 degrees or 40 degrees Celsius or even hotter. They will only come if you can stabilize the temperature of the room for long enough. And and essentially what they're thinking is, okay, this room has been warm long enough that it would be a smart idea for me to move here. This is just what success is like, guys. And whereas the small creatures will come first, you'll see minor achievements when you start changing your identity, like improved conversations and just like little successes, maybe like a little bit of weight loss. But again, the long term and the big successes that you have will only come when you can actually stabilize the temperature of the zoo room, right? And this is only done by doing identity work and actually figuring out why is it that I think, or just going back to these fundamental beliefs that you have about yourselves in terms of identity, right? And so, for example, in the negative 40-degree environment, you're in survival mode. So these are essentially your defensive relationships that are going to be built on mistrust, your scarcity thinking patterns, your stress eating and fast food indulgence, hypervigilant protective behaviors. And in the positive 40 environment, you're in thriving mode, right? So you have relationships that are based on mutual growth. You have an abundance mindset and you have a generous spirit. You're intuitively healthy. You have intuitively healthy eating patterns. You're confident. You have open social behaviors, etc. And you'll constantly see and I mean, you guys have definitely seen this before, but I'm sure you guys have come across a person who you thought that person's going to be successful. Like I know that they're going to be successful, and they hadn't actually achieved success yet, right? On the outer world, they didn't actually have the money yet, but you just had a feeling, right? You just come across these people who you just know that success is coming, and they're bound for success, and lo and behold, 2 years later, 1 year later, that person's successful, right? Why is it that these people are successful? It's because these people have you felt their identity thermostat was extremely high, right? These people often speak in like delusional ways where they're essentially like like I know that I'm going to be a millionaire. I know that I'm going to be a millionaire. I know that I'm going to be the best at this. I'm going to be the best in the world. Even just like typical I mean, typical example of this is Ronaldo, right? I'm a Messi fan, but Ronaldo is just an excellent example of somebody who had an extremely high inner world prior to being one of the best soccer players in the world, arguably the best. Where you can hear him talk about it. He's just so delusionally confident that he's the best. Prior to being the best, when he was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, prior to being on Manchester United, this guy would just talk about how he's like, I'm going to be the best. Like, I will be the best. Like, and it was with full conviction and confidence that he was going to do it. Right. And then people felt it. People knew that, like, holy shit, like, this guy actually really might be the best. And it's always people like that who end up actually achieving the success. And in the same way, prior to me making my first six-figure month or just achieving the success that I've achieved or having the physique that I have now year round, because I don't regress anymore. I'm always like lean, for example. My friends know this about me as well, where I was fully delusional about my goals. where I genuinely had no fucking money in my bank account. I literally did not give a shit. And I was like, yeah, I know that I'm going to make six-figure months. And I know that in 2026, for example, and I can guarantee you guys can come back in a year from now and I'll have my first seven-figure month. I know that I can do million months. And I say that with full conviction because I know that I'm going to do it. And that comes from identity. And you guys, when it comes to whatever goals you want, you should also have that full deep-rooted conviction, and that comes from your identity, right? And as long as your identity isn't there, as long as you truly don't believe that about yourself on an identity layer, those things just won't come, okay? And again, what you saw with Ronaldo is he just had this massively hot terrarium, and over time, he began to see the successes, right? Transferred to Manchester United, had an insane career there, transferred to Real Madrid, all these sorts of things. And that was his outer world matching his inner world. And his inner world was so high that it just kept matching and matching and matching, Ballon d'Or winner, etc. Okay. So the way this works on a neuroscientific level, which identity works, is you have something called the salience network in your brain. So this is made up of the anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortex. Doesn't really matter. And what this does is it's again salience network. What does the salience mean? What is salient in my environment? What is noticeable environment? My environment. What do I notice? And this is the sort of the relevance filter that is highlighting identity aligned elements, and it dims any information that is contradictory. So a good example of this is, let's say somebody believes, let's say I believe that I'm not charismatic. I believe that I'm unbelievably uncharismatic, right? I will ignore every single person that smiles at me. And this happens. Like this, like the studies have been done on this. But I will ignore people who have smiled at me. I will ignore people who paid attention to me when I spoke. I will ignore all of that thing, all of those things, and I will actually only confirm my belief about myself by by noticing the one person who looked at me weird when I talked. This is what happens. If you, and this is what about, like, let's say body dysmorphia is you, let's say you look a certain way, but your identity is I'm fat, you will find whatever you can about your body to try to confirm the belief that you're fat, right? Whatever you can. Even if it's like the slightest bit of fat, you'll see it. And this is me on this used to be me on cuts where I would get the slightest bit of fat and I'd be like, oh, fuck it. Like, and I was already shredded and I could see fucking ab veins. But I still had this fundamental belief about myself that I wasn't lean for. I was fat. And again, it came from my identity that I had. And what's so important about this is, for example, an identity belief that you have is I'm a failure. And if you truly believe that about yourself, you will confirm every piece of evidence to confirm you will find every piece of evidence to confirm that belief about yourself. And something to I guess another important thing to take note here is that your brain does not give a single fuck about truth in the outer world. It cares about coherence with itself, coherence with its own beliefs. And so if that means filtering, it doesn't matter if I believe if I'm actually lean, for example, or if I actually have money. If I don't believe that about myself, right? If I think that if I have contradictory beliefs, my brain will do whatever it can to confirm those beliefs, right? It doesn't care about what's actually out there. This is how your brain works. This is literally a salience network in action, right? This is the anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortex filtering information to confirm whatever beliefs that you have about yourself. And this is going on all the time, all the time, all the time. And so the Kantian insight, I'm in a Kant class right now. Immanuel Kant is this famous philosopher. And he talks about how the world conforms to the mind. Although he goes way more in depth. But what's fundamentally true about this is that you don't see the world as it is, you see it as you are. Okay. And it's so true because your brain is only receives about 0.00005% of sensory inputs that are reaching consciousness. Your brain is bombarded with about 11 million bits of information per second. 11 million bits. It actually consciously processes 40 to 50 bits of information per second. So you're filtering out the other 10,999,950 bits of information. Because again, your brain can't handle all of those sensory inputs. And so your salience network and your thalamic and frontal parietal circuits in the brain are the gatekeepers for filtering those millions of inputs. Okay. And so a good way now, like a more practical way to go about this. And I'll give you guys some practical things to do that don't require necessarily a mentor, but things that you guys can just start on your own. One thing is I'm thinking about going into yeah, we can go through this first. So identity change is neuroplasticity, is essentially what happens. And what that means, neuroplasticity just means your brain's ability to rewire itself, right? It's your brain's ability to change the way that it's wired. And our brains, what we're realizing, and this is just very true about the brain, is your brain is extremely plastic, which is now this whole emerging field of science, which is neuroplasticity. You guys have probably seen Andrew Huberman. If you have, he talks about this all the time, and how your brain can strengthen certain neural pathways and break other ones. And these neural pathways are the pathways that are responsible for making you think the way you do about yourself, think about the world, and and again, these neural pathways are what cause you to act, right? Even as I move my hand right now, that is a neural pathway that is causing the hand movement. In the same way, the actions that you undertake throughout the day are also just a manifest symptom of neural pathways. And so repeated thought patterns will strengthen your neural pathways. So what are you constantly repeating about yourself, and what are you constantly saying to yourself? And this is why, for example, affirmation-based journaling and future self narratives, which I'll explain in a little bit, are very fundamental and very important to actually begin to strengthen your pathways in the direction of the identity that you want. Okay. Identity affirmations rewiring your brain physically. And then your new self-concept, what you'll see is by doing, for example, and so actually what I'll do, guys, I'm actually gonna pull up one of my templates that I give my mentees that I talk about, which is the future self narrative. Futures. One sec. Okay, cool. So the future self narrative, this is, and I can probably send you guys this as well, but this is essentially how, and it's a really practical tool that I use with a lot of my mentees, that can really help you sort of change the way that you view yourselves. Because I want you guys to at least take something away from this in terms of like on a tangible level rather than just theory, neuroscientific theory and like philosophical theory. So I'll just go through a little bit of this where there's a paradox at the heart of human transformation, which is we cannot become what we cannot first imagine ourselves being, which is just extremely true, right? How do you expect, right? Ronaldo couldn't become the player he did without first being able to imagine what he would have to be. You have to be able to see what your future will look like. You have to be able to imagine, you have to be able to visualize the person that you want to become prior to becoming that person. Right. And yet most people will approach change as if their future self will just sort of magically emerge from the accumulation of your present actions without ever constructing a coherent vision of who they're becoming. And so, again, this is precisely backwards, as I've kind of explained now. And the future self narrative represents a sophisticated technology for reprogramming the very foundation of your psychological architecture. It operates not through wishful thinking or positive affirmations, but by leveraging the brain's fundamental prediction mechanisms to create sustainable identity change. And so I already went through kind of the four-layer architecture. This is kind of the parts of the brain. I won't really go over the parts of the brain that it works on, but it works on important parts of the brain that are used for self-concept. The one that I actually go about that's quite important is memory and future prediction or projection. This is one of my favorite things about the future self narrative. So something really cool, guys, is the same parts of your brain that are used in recalling past experiences. So your hippocampus, your medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, these parts of your brain are the default mode network, as neuroscientists call it. Much of the default mode network is used for recalling the past. And when you think about a memory right now, right, in general, those parts of the brain begin to activate when you're recalling any memory. However, what's also important is that part of the brain is also is active when imagining future scenarios about yourself. The exact same parts of the brain that are used for recalling the past are also used for seeing the future and seeing your future, right? And so right now, your future, the way that you see your future right now, is limited by the self-concept you have about yourself, about prior beliefs you have about yourself, and prior experiences that you've had in your life, right? And those are limiting, right? Because if I believe I'm a failure from my past, then my future is is capped out by that belief that I have about myself. I just believe that my future will also lead to failure. So, why is it so important? When you write a future self narrative and you can actually reconstruct the way that you view your future, okay? And so you got to stay with me here because it's really important, but it's pretty cool how this works. And this is why future self narratives are so important. If you can change the way that you view your future by, for example, by writing a future self narrative, which is essentially where you write a first person or present tense script of yourself, right? Saying like, I have like you're essentially writing your day out from the future as if it were happening now. For example, a really good example of future self narrative is like I wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. and I have an energy in my body and I get up to do and you describe your entire day from beginning till end. And the more specific and the more detailed and the more emotional you are and the more vivid you are in your descriptions, the better it is in triggering neuroplasticity in the changing of neural circuits. So if you can change the way that you view your future, right? And so now we're working on the same parts of the brain that are actually used to interpret your past as well. Same parts of the brain, right? So I write the future self narrative. I'm actually rehearsing it, let's say twice a day. Let's say I'm rehearsing it. There are different ways that you can rehearse future self narratives, which I talk about in my mentorship. But a decent way to do it is, for example, like morning and night is a good sort of protocol to go through. Is every single morning and every single night, first thing in the morning, last thing at night is read your future self narrative. I'm now changing these neural circuits that are associated with my future. However, those exact neural circuits are the exact circuits that are used to interpret my past. So if I can change the way that I view my future, much of the way that I interpret my past also changes. And so the way that I interpret myself as a human being begins to change. And it's incredible how just by doing something like a future self narrative and by doing an identity protocol like this, the way that you view your past, whether you were a failure or whether you hate yourself or you think you're fat or all of these things begins to change on a very, very fundamental level. And it's a really weird feeling as well, where even for me, when I look back and I look back at myself regressing from bulimia, like so throwing up my food every single time I don't know if I clarified that by the way. If I didn't, I apologize. But that's what bulimia is I would throw up my food every single time I would eat it because I was just so I fucking hated myself and I hated the fact that I ate too much, so I would just throw up all my food. And that's what the blood in the toilet was. Because like my blood pressure would get so high when I would press so hard that like blood would just come out of my nose as well. The way that I look at that experience of myself is and if somebody were to ask me, well, Amber, like why did you constantly regress and go and regress back to bulimia? The answer that I would give them is not, oh, because I was a failure. Like I was just a fat ugly loser. I wouldn't say that anymore. If you were to ask me that though, when prior to doing identity work, I would probably say that. And so my question to you guys is look at the way that you talk about your past selves and whether you say that you call yourself a loser or a failure or all these negative things about yourself. Whatever you're saying about yourself in the past is often things that we say about ourselves right now. And now when somebody asks me, Amber, why did you go back to regressing to bulimia? And why, uh, why do you just constantly self-sabotage? I just say, oh, well, because I was learning. I was just learning, right? That small shift in your identity is what will lead to massive success because it just changes the ways that you operate in the world. And it changes the way that you view yourself and changes the opportunities that you're going to come by in life. And it changes the way, again, that you're going to filter the world, which is just so important, right? Two people will two people will enter the exact same, let's say, stock market. One person will see only opportunity, and the other person will be like, oh, we're absolutely fucked. Like, and the thing is, they're looking at the exact same stock market. Let's say they're looking at the exact same market. One person though is filtering it differently than the other person. It's just insane how this works, guys. So there's a real salience network that is filtering your identity and that salience network and all of these networks in your brain that are operating are rooted in your identity. Is what I found out. And this is essentially what's kind of like changed all of my mentees' lives and my life as well. So um I just want to see if there's anything in this specifically that I want to go over that isn't too mentee specific. Yeah, and so okay, yeah, this is important. There's so Chris Williamson. I actually just saw Chris Williamson 2 days ago. and you guys probably know Chris Williamson, but I'm in Vancouver right now. I saw him 2 days ago. He talked about this thing called the Lomi chapter, which is where your former self, right? So you have this old group of friends, and this is so important, guys. And I'm glad that I'm actually touching on this because I know that a lot of you guys are probably striving towards this like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K months and above. Right? And you guys should be striving to fucking higher than that. Like you really should. There's no reason if you believe like, oh, I just want to stop at 50, that's an identity-based limit that you have. Like who the fuck told you that you just need to stop at 50K? If you believe that about yourself, you have been told by somebody else or by society that that is your limit. And that's like, it's completely illusory. It's fucking fairy dust. It doesn't exist, that limit. The and you need to investigate where does that limit come from? Who told me this? And this is why journaling is so important, guys. If you don't journal, like let me just tell you one thing is just go fucking journal. Go journal about what you're thinking about right now and just see where your mind goes. People think journaling is doesn't work, which is just so sad because it is the foundation of uh just on a neurological level as well as like that is the thing that really strengthens neural pathways and will break other ones just by journaling. When you're I lost where I was, but essentially the oh yeah, the limits. When you find out where go journal and try to find out where these limits come from that you have about yourself, and you'll realize that they were just told to you. And whatever limits that you think that you have are again, they just don't exist. And you shouldn't believe yourself to have limits. Again, there's no reason why you cannot accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. Generally, like it could be anything, unless you want to do a 100-meter track race and you're not black. There's like genetic limitations there. But but other than that, right? There's like I mean, if you go to the Olympic final, like unfortunately, if you're not black, you're not making it to the top. But other than that, right? There are certain genetic limitations that we all have, but when it comes to like doing something like achieving like success or all of these things, that is completely mental, and it's you've been lied to about you not being able to do some sort of successful thing. It's a complete construct that's been externally imposed onto you, and so yeah, that's just like a sort of side tangent, but I highly recommend investigating what beliefs you have about yourself and why you think, oh, like 10K is all I want to make. Bro, like 10K, just to tell you guys right now, it's so like if you have a good offer, a decent offer, and you just know how to like kind of offer your like uh, position yourself in a not even a okay way, in like a bad way, you can still do 10K per month. I promise. Like it's not as hard as you think it is. The reason why you think it's hard is because again, these identity beliefs that you have about the world and the beliefs that you have about the world are money is hard to come by. 10K a month is a lot. I am somebody who cannot achieve that much success. All of these things that you probably believe about yourself. But as soon as you now like and George and Ethan know this about me, but for example, like 80K is probably what we're like 80K is like a low month now, right? Like the lows get higher as your identity increases, right? And eventually it's only going to get higher and higher and higher and higher. Um, and yeah, again, this all comes back. Just notice the recurring theme here, guys, which is this is all stemmed in your beliefs about yourself and your beliefs about the world that stem from the beliefs about yourself. Okay, and so the only chapter that Chris Williamson talks about is how you're no longer like your old group of friends, and you still haven't achieved the success to kind of integrate with a new set of friends either, right? So you're in this weird phase where you're not, I guess, like quote unquote better than your old group of friends who don't care about what you want to do and just want to continue living life the same, but you still haven't achieved the success to merge in with that new group of friends. And Chris was actually talked about how to escape the lonely chapter, and I kind of disagreed with him at when he was presenting. And I feel like he was talking about like, yeah, you need to reach out and you need to do all of these things and you need to do these actions, 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 actions. But the way that I would go about it, and this is what I found, guys, too, and I promise this will work for you, is as soon as you just, again, increase the temperature of your thermostat, as soon as you begin to just act as the person, right? You become the person first who on identity level who is doing these things, you will see that you will naturally achieve the success you want to achieve. That will just be a byproduct of it, right? I've explained that now is you will achieve if you believe that yourself to be a hard worker who finishes things, who's an entrepreneur and who does all these things, you will naturally do those things because they are rooted in your identity. and you will achieve those achievements that you want to achieve. And then by achieving those things, people will come to you and they'll be like, "Oh, hey, like you're in our same group," and you'll just naturally have people um, want to be friends with you, and you'll find that new group of friends. So don't be constantly. My advice wouldn't be to like constantly reach out to people and to try to find people. And if you haven't achieved the success, like what, with all due respect, it's like why would somebody be friends with you if you haven't achieved the success yet? It's like you haven't proven it. You have to prove it to yourself first. Prove it to yourself first. Become that person first, right? And this other thing that I talk about is be, do, have, the paradigm be, do, have versus have, do, be. We believe that you have to have the thing. Many people believe that you have to have the thing to do the thing to become the person. For example, if I want to get rich, or let's say I want to get rich, I say, yeah, like I'll start investing when I have money. It's like what the fuck do you mean you're gonna start investing when you have money? It's like, aren't you supposed to invest to have money? Like, or for example, oh, I'll go to the gym. I'll go to the gym when I'm not exhausted, or when I'm not tired, or when I'm healthier. It's like, bro, you should probably be going to the gym to become healthy. And you see, so the person wants to have healthiness or non-tiredness to do the thing, which is going to the gym, to become a healthy person, which is just completely flipped. And this is just how society has kind of taught us. Like this is why society is just generally fucked. And whatever anyone tells you, you should probably ignore when it comes to this sorts of stuff. Whereas you have to become the person. So even if you're tired or even if you're poor, you start doing the thing that that person would do, which is investing, for example, like if you want to trade or start your business or whatever it is. Or for example, if you're fat, you go to the gym, right? You become the person who wants to do the thing. And so then you do the thing, which is go to the gym, and then you'll have the outcome, which is you'll actually have the physique or you'll have the financial success, right? So it's be, do, have to become the person first, and then you do the thing, and then you have the thing, not have, do, be, which is the reverse paradigm, which is wrong, right? And so back to this is, and the lonely chapter is you have to become the person who's successful first once and on an identity level. And people will, and once you're like that on an identity level, and once you're doing the things that person would do, then you'll naturally do the things that that person will do. And you won't have to, I'm going on so many little sidebars, but these are so important. Is if you're disciplining yourself to to do something, there's probably an identity issue going on. You shouldn't be constantly disciplining yourself, guys. And you should want to do the things that are going to pull you in the direction you want to. You should be pulled by your identity. You shouldn't be disciplining yourself. If you're disciplining yourself, that means you don't like it. That means your identity is in conflict with what you want to do. And you're just going to get exhausted over time. And you're just going to get more exhausted, more exhausted. I don't care how much willpower you have. I don't care how much discipline you have. You're just going to fail. You're going to regress back. What you need to do is you need to have change your identity on a fundamental layer where you actually want to do the things that you know are good for you. And then you won't have any exhaustion when it comes to that. And then you'll be pulled in the direction that you want to be pulled in, right? For me, for example, I used to have to force myself to do like 4 hour work days, 5 hour work days when it came to like doing stuff that I didn't want to do. Now, if I genuinely just enjoy working 14 hours or like 10 to 14 hours a fucking day on my business, trying to scale, trying to write, trying to do all these things, because I genuinely enjoy it. Like I genuinely like this shit. And it's because my identity is in alignment with the things that I want to do, right? And that's why I rapidly progress. And that's why I know I'm gonna hit 500K months extremely soon. I'm gonna hit $1 million months extremely soon, right? I think faster than I think. I think I'm gonna hit 500K months, for example, by March. I genuinely think I'm gonna hit my first 500K month. And the reason why I'm so confident that's going to happen is because I'm being pulled in the direction by my identity. I'm not pushing against it. You're being pulled by your identity. That's so important. And so, again, there's this weird thing where people jerk off to the idea of discipline, which is just so weird to me because you shouldn't be constantly disciplining yourself in this masochistic way where you enjoy the pleasure of disciplining yourself. It's like, why don't you just want to do it? Ask yourself that. And then maybe you don't need to discipline yourself anymore, right? I want to go to the gym. Many of you guys probably want to go to the gym. You probably enjoy it, right? You don't discipline yourself. You're not like, oh, fuck, I need to go to the gym. A lot of you guys are in good shape, for example, and you just want to go to the gym because it's a part of your identity. Notice how you have the identity rooted in yourself where I am a healthy person. So you just want to go to the gym. It goes for everything else. So back to this lonely chapter is once you start doing those things, your your the new people will come, the new animals, right, in the terrarium will come because there's this weird temp, and I call it the slush zone in my Substack where, and I'll finish up in 5 minutes, guys. So because I know you guys probably want to ask questions too. The slush period where essentially the penguins have kind of left, right, the terrarium, but the lions and all of these animals and all of the plants kind of haven't came yet. And there's this weird period where it's just slush, right? It's ugly and it's lonely, it's just slush. And that is a period that you have to go through in order to achieve success. I don't care who you are, you will go through a lonely chapter. You will. It's just inevitable. And you will always, 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 you might have to go through it several times where you're just constantly breaking apart from these friend groups that you have. But I'm telling you, if I were to give you one piece of advice, just cut them off. Like and learn how to be alone. Learn how to be alone, and that's also a skill in itself. But once you learn how to be alone, you don't need to worry about constantly having these toxic friend groups or these friend groups who are just dragging you back. It's so important to be able to just let go of that old life. Yes, it can be painful, and yes, it will be painful, but that is the only way that you will allow the lions to come into the terrarium, right? They're waiting to come, but they're just waiting you to give the signal, right? And the lions and the penguins are not going to inhabit the same fucking room. That's just not how it works. It's they and this is where most people will quit, right? And I say this in my Substack as well. Is most people will quit at this place of slush where it's very ugly and they don't see the results yet. And the lions haven't came. They don't have their new group of friends. You don't have the success. You haven't got 50K a month. You haven't got the physique, and people just quit and they just regress back. And the thing is you've actually done some good work. You've you've done certain protocols, right? Let's say like you're doing writing or you're doing visualization or you're doing something that teaches Bayesian updates. Your identity set point is raised, and there's now a lag window. So it's going to take time for your environment to catch up, right? You're going to turn the thermostat of the zoo room, and obviously it takes time for a room to heat up once you turn the thermostat, right? Let's say I turn the thermostat and I start crying because the room doesn't heat up right away. The people in the room are gonna show me the exit. They're gonna be like, bro, are you mentally ill? It takes a little bit of time for the room to heat up. And the bigger the room, the bigger your goals, the longer it takes for the room to heat up. Right. And so let's say you've actually turned the thermostat. And this is where, again, most people quit, is you'll actually begin to believe yourself to be this person. Most people will get to this lag period where it's slush, and they'll just misread it as failure, and they're just going to drop the dial and they'll just self-sabotage, and they'll just regress back to their identity set point, right? Whereas if you actually just hold the setting, if you continue to do the protocols, if you continue to do the identity work, if you continue to ask yourself these questions about why you believe, why you have these limiting beliefs, where they come from, all of these shadow work, all this stuff that if you guys go on my profile, there's a ton of sauce there when it comes to things that you can do. Your environment will eventually catch up because it will, again, like I said, and this goes back to what I said in the beginning, is it will just come back to whatever identity set point that you've set to. The outer world will always match the inner world. Okay, and that's when you get external outcomes. Um, yeah, I think that's like the big thing here. And so I'll just end with this, which is your identity is both discovered and created, right? You create your identity as well. A lot of people think they have to find themselves, but you also have to create it yourself as well with the future self narratives. You can get to choose who you want to be. You get to choose how successful you want to. You literally get to choose right now. You can choose how much money you can make in the next 5 years. Like you literally you're able to choose that right now. And I guarantee you can achieve whatever amount that you set if you genuinely just believe that you can do it on an identity level, on an identity layer, right? And somebody who is just aligned with that thing. And again, I don't mean aligned and it's like vibrationally aligned and no, like just neuroscientifically aligned as well, as you will just do the things that that person would do and you will achieve the outcomes they have. Right. And so the job is, I guess, to reroute the river itself, which is your identity is the river and you are the swimmer. If the river is going against you, you're no matter how good of a swimmer you are, the river will overcome you. But if you can get the river to flow in the same direction as you'll just get skyrocketed, right? Or shot to your goals, right? And so past you through a boomerang that present you must catch now. Present you is throwing another that your future you will catch, right? So in the past, you threw a boomerang and your present self is catching that right now. And whether you're in a shitty situation right now and life is shit, or whether you're in a good situation, that's because past you threw a boomerang. And again, you have to catch the boomerang. I once threw one of self-hatred and punishment, which is why I ended up with being bulimic and all of these issues that I had. And my present one and your present one should be a boomerang of self-compassion and excellence, right? And so you need to ask yourself, what boomerang are you going to throw right now that you in 1 year is going to have to catch? And that's the way that you should sort of like retrospective insight, being able to ask yourself, what would future me want from me right now? Um, yeah, time is merely the gap between your internal reality and the external life you ultimately create. Okay, so um, yeah, and I hope that kind of clarified something for you guys. I know that was a lot of mini tangents and stuff that I went on, but hope that at least provided some value for you guys. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask.
Yeah, that was insane, bro. I appreciate that a lot. Like, so much
Of course,
info.
man.
I'll just give you
Yeah,
some
yeah.
context, everyone in the group. So everyone's like quite new to entrepreneurship when it
Mhm,
comes to like making their first like 5 to 10K. What would you
mhm,
say? 'Cause I know you work with a lot of clients. Within the entrepreneurs you work with, what are the main problems they come across first
mhm.
in their identity before coming to you, would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lon. And so I work with it's pretty cool. Identity, there many people have there's like a cacophony of issues that people come with, depending on where they are. I work with many people who make 8 figures per year. I work with many 7 figure entrepreneurs. I work with many 6 figure entrepreneurs, and I work with people who haven't made 6 figures yet, but are having sorts of, and it could be an issue with addiction, for example. Like that's an identity rooted issue. Versus somebody who is already successful, it might be a lack of purpose or meaning, right? Who's gained the 8 figures and they realize money doesn't just make you happy like that, and they'll realize, oh, like I've actually been skipping this part of myself my entire life and I don't know where to go, right? Feeling of loss, feeling lost in general, that's an identity rooted issue. Feeling like self-sabotage is just a typical one where you see with everyone, where a lot of the people that I work with will have decent success, they'll make a lot of money, right? I work with a lot of people who have made a fuck ton of money, but they'll just self-sabotage in the sense that they'll almost get comfortable with how much money they have and they know they can do more and they have this potential that's locked up that they want to do more with, but they can't because they just can't access it. And they know, and it hurts them every single day knowing 7 figures or 8 figures isn't their capacity. They want to do more than that. And that's the cool thing about identity, Lennon, is that there's so many uh, everything stems, all of the negative behaviors that you have or that anyone has, including myself, stem from identity. And all of them can be solved by answering the questions like, who are you? Just at the bottom and being able to kind of rewrite that narrative about yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
Vladimir. What's up, Vladimir?
Oh, shit. Was good, bro. Thanks for that again for everything that you said.
Hmm.
Just want to quickly ask, I don't know how simple or complicated the answer is going to be, but in terms of actually journaling, how do you do it
Hmm.
correctly and how do you maximize, getting the most efficient results?
Yeah, yeah. So here I'm gonna I'll actually, okay, you guys can see this. One sec. Fuck, I can't see you guys now though. One sec. I'm gonna reshare. I'll go over, like, for example, the future self narrative and showing kind of how you can go about that on a tangible level. If I can actually find my fucking Notion. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, so the way, for example, a really good journaling technique that I like, there's affirmation-based journaling, for example, and you can look into affirmation-based journaling, future self-narrative-based journaling, visualization techniques. All these are really good for neuroplasticity. The when it comes to, and I'll just kind of go over my template. This is just straight sauce, by the way, guys. So, I would highly recommend, like, or I can even send you guys this. I don't really care, but what you want to do is you want to begin by conducting a thorough audit of your current identity. What stories do you tell yourself about about who you are? What limitations feel true about your character? This awareness will create the necessary contrast for your future construction. Right, that's the first sort of question that you want to ask yourself. Next is you want to identify your target identity with precision. So you want to ask yourself, what type of person naturally generates the outcomes I desire? Focus on character traits, behavioral patterns and internal states rather than external achievements. So again, a big thing when you're writing this is you're writing about the person that you've become, but you're not about what you have. Like, I have $8 million in my bank account or I have a Ferrari, but what sort of person have you become so that those things are natural, right? Why do you have a Ferrari? Right? Are you a hard worker? Do you commit to things? Are you, right? If you have the physique, if you have a six pack, why do you have a six pack? Okay, because I'm somebody who prioritizes his health. I'm somebody who deeply cares about his self-image. I'm somebody who respects himself. All these sorts of things, right? And so typically I like 800 to 1,200 words. There, again, there's so many different variations of future self narratives that I do with my mentees. Like you can have 5 different variations. You can have many future self scripts, but this is a really good one, for example, where so your morning routine, for example, talk about your awakening experience. How does your future self begin each day? What is the quality of your consciousness upon waking? Talk about that. Physical embodiment. How does your body feel? What is your relationship with movement, nutrition, and energy? Work and creative expression. How do you engage with your personal life? What drives you? Relationships and social dynamics. How do you show up in relationships? What kind of presence do you bring? And evening and reflection. How do you process the day before sleep? Right as if you are living this reality now, not hoping to achieve it. Right. So, for example, you want to use present tense throughout. So, I wake naturally at 6:30 a.m. feeling refreshed and energized, rather than I will wake up early. If you say will, you actually immediately your brain sees that as distance. Interestingly enough, so if you say I'm going to become a millionaire and I'm going to have a Ferrari, as optimistic as that sounds, there's still a dissonance where there's still distance between you and that person, and you've kind of inserted a gap. Whereas you just need to say, I am, I am, I am. Well, again, listen to just any successful person, like Ronaldo, for example. Like he's just a perfect example because this guy just says it out loud, like without caring, which I respect him for. But he used to just say, I'm the best. I'm just the best. I'm 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 the best. And he was, right? There was periods where he just was the best too. So that it's that same sort of idea where when your brain is reading this, your brain almost thinks that it's this person, right? And that's when the neuroplasticity is happening, and you actually see the neural circuits begin to form for this new version of yourself. And it's really cool. You begin to create like a neural template, right? Daily protocol that I like to do: read your narrative slowly each morning within 30 minutes of waking. I would say just do it right away. Like I literally, guys, I have my future self narrative on me. I have several different stuff in this notebook, but my future self narrative is one of them. First thing when I wake up is I before I do anything, and last thing before I go to sleep, for example. And you can even read it several times a day whenever you're feeling like you're wavering. This is a really good future self narratives are just so good when it comes to kind of regrounding yourself. Engage all senses while reading. So like feel the emotions, visualize the environments, really embody the experience. Don't just fucking read it like you're reading some like a random Twitter post. Read it, embody it, right? Really imagine yourself as you're reading it, like this is what my life will look like. Spend 2 to 3 minutes after reading it in embodied visualization, something that I explain later, but essentially I'm going to be talking about this on my Instagram as well. So over there, I'll talk about how to visualize, but you guys have probably heard visualization. You guys can probably find ways to do decent visualization as well online. But you want to close your eyes usually, and you want to really visualize that experience because that really works in the emotional level, by the way, of the inner world, right? The emotions, where you really begin to feel the emotions of being able to give your parents money, being able to retire your parents, all of these things, right? And then you want to review and refine the narrative weekly based off of emerging insights that you have. And then but you don't want to refine it constantly. You want to you want to like have it set for a little bit, and then you can refine it, and over time you can create like different narratives as well. But I hope that kind of I hope that helps Vladimir in terms of that.
Brilliant. Yeah, that was some good sauce, bro. Cheers for that.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, what's up, Sam?
Hey, bro, can you hear me all right?
Yep,
Perfect. So yeah, appreciate the source that you've been dropping, by the way.
of
But
course.
in regards to my question, you mentioned this slush period, that
Mhm.
happens. You're putting in the work and not necessarily seeing these instantaneous results. These results that you're after. Once you get past this period and you start to see, the results and the fruits of the labor that you're putting in, what sort of mindset shift do you have to adapt to keep that momentum going and to,
Mm.
scale
Mhm.
and, not necessarily get ahead of yourself, but keep yourself grounded and,
Mhm.
sort of grow efficiently?
Good question, bro. Really good question. So number one is I would say you don't want to have a drastic shift in your mindset. That kind of indicates that you achieve something and you're like, holy shit, like I didn't expect to achieve this. That's not the reaction you should have. It should more so be, oh, I knew this was going to happen, right? I was doing the work, I was putting in the work, I was doing the identity work, and I just naturally, again, like the fruits came naturally, right? And so afterwards, after you even achieve whatever that success was, to continue moving forward is you should already have the reasons prior to achieving that success. If you don't have the reasons prior, that's a signal that you might be lacking something on identity level, and you might be at risk for regression, right? A lot of people who lose the weight are like, holy shit, like, oh my God, like I didn't expect this, and then they just fall back, right? Whereas other people who lose the weight are like, yeah, bro, I fucking put in the work. Now I'm gonna continue to look like this because that's who I am, right? It's who I am, identity level based. And yeah, when it comes to your future as well, and just a general sort of framework that I like to go by is Jim Rohn talks about reasons, the importance of reasons and writing down your reasons. And so right now, I would say after this call is write down your 10 biggest reasons, your 20 biggest reasons, all your reasons as to why you're doing what you're doing. In terms of do you want to help your mom? Do you want to respect yourself? What do you want to do? Have those by you all the time. I have them in this notebook as well. Have those by you. And so even after you achieve success, you don't forget why you started, right? A lot of people are like, oh, fuck, this money feels so good. I'm just done, right? I could easily just stop at 200K months. That's a lot of fucking money, but I don't care. Like, I want to achieve more than that. I want to make this global. I want to do bigger things, right? I want to create something bigger than myself. And I look back at this and 200K is not on my reasons. You see what I'm saying? And so your reason should be evergreen, right? You should always be able to go back to your reasons and be like, that's why I started, right? And that's why I continue to move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, bro.
Yeah, of course.
I've got another interesting question. So you talked about like distancing yourself from like, your friends you're first starting off with, right?
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't really relate to me, but what do you think of when it comes to family? Maybe they don't have the same beliefs as you, or they think
Ooh.
differently. How would you go about that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Lennon. So family. Um, okay, so there are definitely when I say relationships, so your relationships in your transformation might not necessarily completely break, but they will transform. Okay, and they will fundamentally change. And so there are people who might not you might actually completely distance from, and I think it's pretty easy, of course, Jack. I think it's pretty easy to realize the people who just actually provide nothing to your life, right? Like absolutely nothing in terms of your friends, not your family. I'm just talking about friends right now, where you know that, no problem, Alex. You know that these people are hindering your success, and they actually don't even want you to succeed. There's this presence of envy that you begin to feel with these people. You need to be very careful around those people, um, specifically because of something called I think it's called the Pygmalion effect. I think it's called the Pygmalion effect, the Pygmalion effect, where it's so interesting how the expectations of other people, Lennon, will actually have an impact on your own success. For example, if somebody believes that you're going to be successful in what you do, you actually have like this is just a fact as well. You have a higher likelihood of achieving that thing if other people around you think that you're going to achieve it. Right? This is why the people that you surround yourself with are so fucking important. Like people, and it's not people think, well, yeah, like the people I surround myself with are fine, they're okay, and it's not that important. No, no, no. The reason why it's so important is because if and this is just shown, for example, with races, right? The 100-meter race, let's say, if you believe people to believe that you're going to win, and if you have the expectation to win of yourself, you just have a better time. Even if you don't win, you just have a better time score, right? And so in general, it's extremely important to really be extremely particular with who you surround yourself with. And with that said, is some relationships will naturally break. Now, when it comes to your family, and to actually bring it back to the family, is there are obviously people in our families that and much of us love our families very much, where we don't want to remove them entirely from our lives. But what I will tell you is that if you do want to become successful, and if you don't want them to impact you negatively, and you don't want this Pygmalion effect to occur in a negative way, you have to uh, transform the relationships. So they don't need to break, but they need to change. So the way for, let's say you have a father who is extremely pessimistic about your goals, extremely pessimistic. And every single time you speak to him, he's just always beating you down about your goals. And he's just like, you're a fucking failure, or this is stupid. Why are you doing this? You should go to fucking med school or do engineering or whatever it is. Although like med school is fine. I'm nothing against med school. But like, let's say he tells you to be like an accountant, let's say. And he thinks that's the safe route. Obviously, he has a misunderstanding when it comes to how the world operates right now. And so what you don't need to do is cut him off and say like I like because again, he's provided a lot to you and he probably does care for you and he probably wants the best for you. But what you need to do is you need to really rethink how you go about the relationship. The respect that you demand from him has to change, and you just speak to him about different things. So a lot of the time, you can still fly and reach the skies and still look back at certain people and acknowledge them,
Mm.
but you don't need to. That that doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice your own goals just because you are acknowledging that they're still around, right? And so the way this looks on like on a tangible level is you just don't talk to your, for example, like let's say Johnny has a dad who's really negative. Johnny doesn't talk to his dad as much about about that stuff. And when his dad does try to press him on it, Johnny simply either backs off and he doesn't speak to him about it, or he tells his dad, "This is just not how it's going to work. Like I'm simply just not somebody." And that's just how it has to go. And it's a hard thing to do, and it can be extremely intimidating, especially with your parents. And they might cut you off, but if that happens again, that's a whole different can of worms. But that just really shows emotional immaturity on their end of things. But you need to focus on yourself and on what you can do. And you simply, not to fight with them, but to demand respect. And that simply you knowing about yourself that you will do this, that whatever you want to do. It's so important to really continue to do whatever you want to do, regardless of what your family says. And you need to believe that you're right in a very delusional way. And that will just naturally transform the relationships you have. And like prior, for example, to being successful, even with me, my dad and mom were quite skeptical of all of it, but now they just respect me tremendously, and now I take care of them, right? And I told them from the past, like I'm gonna fucking do this. I will do this. Like I don't care what you guys say, right? Again, it comes back to this thing of like just being delusional in your goals. So yeah, it's not. And now like my mom is like my best friend, so the relationship changed in a healthy way as well, where I have my respect and I still, she also has her respect, but the way that we operate is very different from how it used to be, where they are the ones in the hierarchy on the top of the hierarchy, right? So I guess it's not necessarily cutting them off with your family. However, there can be times where family can become so toxic, and there are rare scenarios where, yeah, like I'm not going to give advice here, but there are just times where it's like it can be so bad that sometimes you just have to remove yourself from the family for even a little while so you can just pursue your dreams,
Yeah,
right?
and when you obviously you mentioned hanging around people is really important. So obviously,
Mhm.
recently, in the last few years, I've built up a good network. But do you think
Yeah.
I constantly need to be trying to find these new rooms to get to the next
Mm.
level, and then from that
Mm.
get to the next level?
I think the rooms will find you. So I think that as you continue to increase the temperature of your thermostat, and as you continue to increase high levels of success, Lennon, the opportunities will find you.
Okay.
Law of detachment is huge, right? Like I think law of detachment is a big thing that I've learned is you need to detach from the outcomes. Just forget about the outcomes. Focus on who you are. Focus on what you're doing every single day, and the outcomes will follow. The friend groups will follow. The lions will come, right? The terrarium will fill up with the new animals. So don't focus on always going. And again, like Chris said, and there's something that actually one of the very few things I disagree with Chris on, which is reaching out, trying to find. It's they'll find you. And obviously there will be times where you have to do like a little bit of a reach out where like you now have the ability to join a group because you make a certain amount of money, right?
Mm,
So you can actually reach out now, and you might reach out because you become that person, right? But it's not this desperate sort of attempt, right? That's
mm.
there's a difference. So yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. What's up, Charlie? Of
Yeah, appreciate that, man. What would
course.
you say the most useful source of piece of information? I'm referring to like potentially books here or a potential video to actually watch that you found in your experience that has been most useful for you when it comes to having this mindset that we've talked about all today on the call and
Really good question, bro. Oh, I'd have to think about that. There's a few that are kind of percolating. One would be Chris Williamson's conversations with Alex Hormozy. All five of them are fucking dialed. They talk about how they're just really, really, really good conversations. So Chris Williamson and Alex Hormozy, those five conversations can be life-changing. I've actually watched those on repeat several times. It's Chris Williamson's podcast. Those five, and then a book. Man, there are so many books. I would say a really good way to begin to, I guess, fortify your mind and kind of strengthen that would be Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's a classic entry book into philosophy, and it's a classic book into Stoicism, and realizing that, again, I guess one of the core tenets of Stoicism is that external events don't dictate your life. Whatever happens on the outside doesn't dictate your life. What dictates your life is how you respond to those events, right? So you will never be able to control what happens to you, ever. You will never, ever be able to control the external world. There's just shit that's going to fucking happen. But what you can control is how you react, right? And Marcus Aurelius is a really good gateway into understanding that part of your mind, where when you learn that you can really change the way in which you react to certain things that happen in your life, then no problem, Sam. Then your life can change because you realize that you're in control, right? So Meditations by Marcus Aurelius would be a really good one that I would start with for sure. If I were to give you one, that's and then I think you'll kind of you'll naturally fall into rabbit holes just by reading
Yeah,
that.
no, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. What's up, Vladimir?
That's good, bro. Another question. Bit of a personal one on my current situation. So
Mhm.
I'm a college student myself. I'm in second year computer science and
Mhm.
deciding to defer my second semester until 2027 January. And like
Okay.
you said, I'm in that kind of zone where I'm kind of isolated and no one quite understands what I'm trying to achieve. Is there any advice on how to overcome that, or I suppose keep my head up straight and get through it?
What do you want to do?
What do I want to do?
Yeah.
As in like the overall end goal, or
Yeah.
make money, have freedom, travel when I want, where I want,
Mhm.
be able to take care of my family, and ultimately help people. I love helping people myself.
Mhm. And how do you feel that computer science ties into that? Do you feel that it ties into that, or do you feel it's something that's kind of holding you back? Just being honest.
It could, but it's not what I want to do ultimately. That's why I'm
So,
deciding to defer, but
Mhm.
there's not much support of me wanting to defer. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. And so my question to you is, you know that you don't want to be, for example, you don't want to be doing computer science for the rest of your life. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So that enough, Vladimir, is, in my opinion, enough for me to tell you that you shouldn't pursue that. Right? You have kind of two options here, which is potentially live a life of regret, pursuing computer science, and that slowing you down and potentially like halting progress, or right. And again, you're speaking to someone who's in school right now. Like I'm in school, but for a different
Mhm.
reason. I genuinely like being in school.
Yeah.
Or you potentially just pursue. Listen, I haven't met anyone who actually has fully pursued a certain thing who hasn't achieved success in it ever,
Yeah.
ever. You just and this is and the reason why is because if you pursue a certain thing enough, and you will just naturally become part of the 1% of the world, or 5%, top 5% of the world. Well, you will just get attract. You will get no problem, bro. You will get you'll get a sufficient amount of skills in that area, and you will be noticed for how proficient you are in that area. So whatever it is that you want to do, and you need to ask yourself what you want to do as well, and what the vehicle will be to get you to that level of freedom. But whatever that is, I would say do that. I would say do that. And so I would say, yes, you should defer. I'm happy that you are doing that. And I think that if you defer and if you really pursue to your goals, you're just going to want to drop out. And I also,
Yeah.
I have nothing against that. I think you should. Um, and I think education is extremely important, but the ways that you can attain education is different, right? And if science
Mhm.
isn't serving you, and if it's something that's honestly hindering you, then that's something that I think you should. I think it's a good idea for you to take that deference, and
Yeah.
then take the period where you're alone to really be able to really just focus on yourself. Don't. What I would say is, don't resort to just trying to fill that void with with any sort of dopamine, whether it's like trying to find a new group of friends that's shitty, or your phone, or whatever it is, food, drugs, porn, all of that
Mhm.
shit. Again, being so there's a difference between loneliness and solitude, right? And so loneliness is people can be in solitude, people can be alone without feeling lonely, right? Like me, I'm almost always alone, but I don't feel lonely. I'm in solitude. I like being alone. My friends know this about me. Whereas people who don't know how to be alone will go into these states of being alone, and they'll feel very, very lonely. the reason why is because loneliness is the inability to be alone without being medicated by some sort of external stimulus. And so when you learn how to be alone without the external stimulus, and you look, and again, this comes from identity, when you really just want to do what you're doing, whatever it is you want to do, Vladimir, and you actually have a real drive and passion towards it, you won't have an issue being in solitude because now you found the thing that really drives you. And so my advice would be try to find that thing that really drives you in this period being alone. Don't let this period of being alone be one where essentially you've wasted time, where you've become alone, but you've distracted yourself the entire time. These are really good periods of time to find yourself and who you are, and ask these questions
Yes,
that I've kind of hinted at, right? So,
that's good.
yeah, and just really just focus on becoming proficient in whatever you are. Whenever you're really good at something, you will just get noticed for it. You will get noticed
Yeah.
for it.
See,
Yeah.
that's where the issue is. I took computer science on as I have a pretty logical brain. I would say I'm
Hmm.
quite intelligent in sense
Hmm.
of actually getting
Hmm.
mathematical stuff right down, but it's not where my passion is. I took it on as a challenge. I enjoy
Hmm.
something that's hard, but just not ultimately where I want to be. So that's where I'm kind of
Yeah.
conflicted, where like it's doing good for me. I'm good at it, but
Hmm.
it's not going to get me to where I want to be.
Yeah.
So
So I
yeah.
would say
So the
use
advice you
that.
gave me was great. Thank you.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Use that intellectual prowess towards things that you know that you want to do, right? In the end, it doesn't matter if you're great at computer science and if you are really good at it. I bet you are. In the end, you'll just have a life that is devoid of purpose or meaning, right? So, and that's the scary thing. And that's why, again, like careful about what your family says. They a lot of the time, and I think a good thing that Hormozy says is when somebody gives you advice, ask yourself, do I want to live the life that this person has, or would I swap places with this person? If the answer is no, and a lot of the time, 99% of the time it will be no, ignore what they have to say. Genuinely,
Yeah,
just ignore it. Yeah.
brilliant. Thank you.
What's up, Blake?
So, have you ever heard of the idea that some people have failed, they're scared of their own success? Like they
100%.
know they can succeed,
Mhm.
and because they're so scared of succeeding, they just self-sabotage.
Right. Yeah. So, of course, bro, that's a good point. So, people are scared of success because of what it would mean if they failed. Is essentially what it's essentially if they really were to a lot of the time they're scared of putting their all into success, and they're scared what it would mean if they put everything they have into achieving success just to fail, what that would mean about them. Right. And so what I would say on that end of things is because again, fear of success is a real thing because a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to give it my all, right? A lot of people will give like 50%. So if they do fail, they're like, oh, well, I didn't put on my 100%, right? At least I didn't put in my full. The thing is failure is a good thing. I tell people this all the time, but you should seek failure. Every single time you fail, think about like you banged into a wall and now you're like ricocheting onto this other wall. And there are these two walls that you're in between. And let's say success at the top every single time you fail, you've kind of banged into a wall and you're going the other way. And then you bang into the wall and you bang into the wall and you keep going and going and going and going and going. And so there's this quote that I love, but if I were to tell you, Blake, you are 50 failures away from becoming successful. 50 failures away. How would you want to fail fast or slow?
Definitely get those as soon as possible.
Right. So what would that mean in terms of failure?
Seeking it out and taking it every single time it
Exactly.
comes.
Right? Because in the end, you are a certain amount of failures away from success. That's just the truth. Is there actually, it doesn't, you don't know how much. It might be 100, it might be four, it might be 50, whatever it is. You're a certain amount of failures away from success. And so you should be seeking the failure. Failure is a good thing. If you shit the bed, it's like, okay, well, now I don't need to shit the bed again. Now I just need to shit the bed somewhere else. And just do that enough times and and you will eventually achieve success, right? So I think that yeah, fear of success is almost a fear of failure, but it's more I would say what it would mean about the person in terms of their identity if they were to fail. That's at least how I interpret it a lot of the time. So yeah,
Thank you.
of course.
Anyone else got any other questions? Now is the time. Anyone got any questions?
Fire talk, guys. That was awesome.
Yeah,
Appreciate you
I think we'll
guys.
leave it as that. But yeah, I appreciate that a lot, bro. That was insane cool. I think all the boys took. And is there anything else you want to say before we head off?
That's it. Yeah, no, just really just focus on who you are, guys, like and who you are at the bottom. And everything else will kind of again find the external geometry of the world will always match the internal geometry, right? That's what I've learned. So as long as that's what I've learned. So as long as you just focus on what's happening inside, don't worry about the external results. The slush period can last for a while, but it won't be slush for that long.
Cool, cool. I forgot to take a picture. Is that okay? You know, for the
Of
journal,
course.
you can
Yeah,
send
yeah.
me that. Okay, appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for giving us an hour and a half of your time. That was probably one of the best calls I've ever had. So, always the same. But
Of
yeah,
course, bro. Yeah. No, no.
thanks,
Glad
man.
glad you guys hopped on.
Love that.
Where them 14K piffs come from, so don't have to be like that. I don't have to act so surprised when they come through now after that.
Yeah.
All right, nice one, boys. Yeah, thank you again for coming on, bro. Appreciate that a
Yeah.
lot. All right, see you,
Yeah,
boys.
of course. Yeah.
See you
Talk to you
later.
guys later.
Thank you.
Later.
Thank
Of
you,
course.
mate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, guys.
Thank you for that.
Guys later.